The Tonight Show studio lights blazed as bright as they always had. But something felt different on this April night in 1979. Johnny Carson, America's beloved late-night king, sat across from John Wayne, the Duke himself. The camera captured what millions would remember forever. Two legends sharing one final moment together. But then it happened. Johnny's hand trembled as he reached for his coffee cup. His famous smile wavered. The Duke leaned forward, his weathered face showing concern that the camera couldn't miss. In the next 60 seconds, the most watched late-night show in America would witness something no one expected. A moment so raw, so human, that it would haunt television history forever. What made Johnny Carson, the man who never lost his composure, break down on live television? The answer lies in a conversation that started like any other interview, but ended with America's heart breaking alongside its favorite host. If you love stories about Hollywood's golden era and the real moments behind the glamour, hit that subscribe button now. You won't want to miss what happened next. The context. Spring 1979 was a peculiar time in Hollywood. The golden age of cinema was fading into memory, and the stars who defined it were aging before America's eyes. Johnny Carson, at 53, was at the absolute peak of his career. The Tonight Show ruled late-night television with an iron grip. 20 million viewers tuned in each night to watch Johnny work his magic. John Wayne was 72 years old. The Duke had been diagnosed with stomach cancer in January 1979, though few people outside his inner circle knew how serious it was. He'd beaten lung cancer 15 years earlier, losing a lung and several ribs in the process. America loved him for his toughness, his cowboy spirit, his refusal to quit. He represented an era of American masculinity that was disappearing. Strong, silent, unshakable. The invitation. The invitation came through Wayne's longtime publicist in late March. "The Duke wants to do The Tonight Show," she told Carson's producers. It might be his last interview. Johnny Carson had interviewed John Wayne several times over the years. Their chemistry was natural. Two professionals who respected each other's craft. But this time felt different. When Johnny received the message in his office at NBC's Burbank studios, he sat quietly for several minutes, just staring at the note. His producer, Fred DeCordova, remembered that moment clearly. Johnny didn't say anything at first. He just picked up the phone and called Duke directly. I heard him say, "You don't have to do this." And then I heard him listening for a long time. When he hung up, Johnny looked at me and said, "He wants America to remember him strong." The preparation. The week before the interview, Johnny did something he rarely did. He obsessed over the preparation. Normally, he preferred spontaneity, trusting his quick wit to carry him through any conversation. But for John Wayne, he wanted to get it exactly right. He watched Wayne's films late into the night. True Grit, The Searchers, Stagecoach, Red River. He read every article written about the Duke over the past 6 months. He talked to people who knew Wayne personally, directors, co-stars, friends. Johnny wanted to understand not just the movie star, but the man behind the legend. The night before the interview, Johnny called his own father in Nebraska. They talked for over an hour, something Johnny almost never did. His father had been a John Wayne fan since the 1940s. "Dad told me that Wayne represented something important," Johnny later confided to a close friend. He said, "When you talk to Duke tomorrow, you're not just talking to an actor. You're talking to the last connection millions of Americans have to a time when things felt more certain." The atmosphere. April 6, 1979. The Tonight Show studio at NBC buzzed with unusual energy. The audience knew something special was happening. Word had spread through Hollywood that John Wayne, who rarely did television interviews anymore, was making what might be his final public appearance. The crew, normally relaxed and joking between segments, worked with unusual reverence. Camera operators checked their equipment 3 times. Sound engineers tested the microphones obsessively. The makeup artist who worked on Wayne noticed his skin had a grayish pallor under the lights, and she used extra foundation to hide how sick he truly looked. Johnny arrived at the studio 3 hours before showtime instead of his usual 90 minutes. He sat in his dressing room going over his notes, but mostly just thinking. His wife Joanna visited him backstage, another unusual occurrence. "Are you okay?" she asked. Johnny nodded, but his eyes told a different story. He was preparing himself for something difficult, something that would require him to be more than just a talk show host. The interview begins. When Ed McMahon announced John Wayne, the audience erupted in applause that lasted over a minute. The Duke walked out slowly, his distinctive rolling gait slightly more labored than in his films. He wore a brown suit that hung a bit loose on his once powerful frame. But his eyes, those legendary blue eyes, still carried that unmistakable Wayne intensity. Johnny stood to greet him, and they shook hands. For a moment, just a brief moment caught by the cameras, you could see Johnny's expression change. Up close, he could see how much the disease had taken from his guest. But Wayne smiled that famous smile, and the interview began. The first 20 minutes were classic Carson, light, funny, warm. They talked about Wayne's recent films. They joked about his infamous on-set arguments with directors. Wayne told a hilarious story about a horse that threw him during the filming of True Grit. The audience laughed, and everything seemed perfect. Johnny was masterful at making hard topics feel comfortable. "Duke, you've been making movies for 50 years now," he said. "That's longer than most people's entire careers. What keeps you going?" Wayne leaned back, considered the question carefully. "Well, Johnny, I figure I'm not done yet. I've got at least a few more films in me." He paused, and something flickered across his face. A shadow of vulnerability that America had never seen from John Wayne. "I want to work until I can't anymore. That's just who I am." The turn. It was during a commercial break that everything shifted. The cameras stopped rolling, and the studio audience chatted among themselves. Johnny leaned toward Wayne, thinking their conversation was private. "Duke, how are you really doing?" he asked quietly. But the microphones were still hot. The audio crew heard everything, and later, some of that conversation would leak to the press. Wayne's voice, usually so strong and commanding, softened. "Johnny, I'm tired. I'm real tired. But I don't want people to remember me as sick. I want them to remember me on a horse, or punching the bad guy, or getting the girl." He paused. "That's why I wanted to come here tonight. To show people I'm still Duke." Johnny's hand, which had been resting on the desk, clenched into a fist. The cameras weren't rolling, so America didn't see the emotion that crossed his face, a mixture of sadness, admiration, and something deeper. This was a man confronting mortality with the same courage he'd shown in 100 films. Back on air. When they returned from commercial, something had changed. The audience could feel it. Johnny's questions became more thoughtful, more personal. He asked Wayne about his childhood in Iowa, about his real name, Marion Morrison, about the moment he knew he wanted to be in movies. Wayne talked about his father, a pharmacist who failed at business after business. "My old man taught me something important," Wayne said, his voice carrying that distinctive cadence that America knew so well. "He taught me that it doesn't matter how many times you fall down. What matters is that you get back up, that you keep your word, that you face things head on." Johnny nodded, listening with an intensity that his audience rarely saw. "That's the characters you played," he said. "But is that who John Wayne really is?" The Duke smiled, not his movie star smile, but something more genuine. "Johnny, I've been playing John Wayne for so long. I'm not sure where Marion Morrison ends and the Duke begins. Maybe they're the same person now. Maybe that's okay. The weight of legacy." As the interview continued, Wayne talked about his concerns for America. He worried that the values he represented, loyalty, courage, hard work, integrity, were disappearing. He didn't say it critically, just sadly, like a father watching his children make choices he didn't understand but couldn't stop. "The world's changing fast," Wayne said. "Sometimes I feel like a dinosaur. My kind of pictures, my kind of heroes, maybe people don't want that anymore. Maybe they want something more complicated, more cynical." Johnny interrupted gently. "Duke, let me tell you something. I talk to people every day, through letters, through ratings, through conversations. People still want heroes. They still want to believe in something bigger than themselves. That's what you gave them. That's what you still give them." Wayne's eyes glistened. Just barely, just enough that the camera caught it. For a man who made a career out of never showing weakness, this tiny crack in the armor was profound. The difficult question. Then Johnny did something brave. He asked the question everyone wanted to ask, but no one dared. "Duke, you've beaten cancer before. You're fighting it again now. A lot of people out there are dealing with the same thing, either themselves or someone they love. What do you tell them?" The studio fell completely silent. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was real life, unfolding on national television. Wayne took a long breath. "Well, Johnny, I'll tell you what I tell myself every morning. Today I'm going to do something. Doesn't have to be something big. Just something. Maybe I'll work on a script. Maybe I'll take a walk. Maybe I'll call an old friend. But I'm not going to sit around feeling sorry for myself." He paused, looking directly at the camera, speaking to millions of Americans watching at home. If you're sick, if you're scared, if you're tired, I understand. I'm there too. But we've got to keep fighting. Not because we're guaranteed to win, but because fighting is what gives our lives meaning. My characters never quit, and neither will I. The collapse. It happened so suddenly that no one was prepared. Johnny had just started to ask another question when his voice caught. He stopped mid-sentence, his famous composure crumbling like sand. His hand went to his face. His shoulders began to shake. Johnny Carson, the man who kept his cool through 17 years of live television, through celebrity meltdowns, through technical disasters, through every imaginable crisis. Johnny Carson was crying on national television. The audience gasped. Ed McMahon stood up from his seat, unsure what to do. The director in the control booth froze, not knowing whether to cut to commercial. But John Wayne knew exactly what to do. The Duke stood up slowly from his chair, walked around the desk, and put his hand on Johnny's shoulder. It was such a simple gesture, but it carried enormous weight. Here was John Wayne, dying of cancer, comforting Johnny Carson for breaking down about John Wayne dying of cancer. Hey, Wayne said softly, his voice barely picked up by the microphones. It's all right, Johnny. It's all right. The moment of truth. Johnny looked up, tears streaming down his face, completely unguarded in front of 20 million viewers. I'm sorry, he managed to say. I'm sorry, Duke. He couldn't finish the sentence. Wayne squeezed his shoulder. Nothing to be sorry about, son. Shows you're human. People forget that sometimes. The audience began to applaud. Not the usual enthusiastic TV applause, but something deeper, more respectful. They were witnessing something rare. Two men being completely honest with each other about fear, about mortality, about love. Johnny took a moment to compose himself, wiping his eyes with his handkerchief. I've interviewed 1,000 people, he said, his voice still shaky. Kings, presidents, movie stars, musicians. But this one, he had to stop again, emotion overwhelming him. This one is hard. I know, Wayne said simply. It's hard for me too. The revelation. What happened next would become legendary in television history. Wayne, still standing beside Johnny's desk, began to speak, not to Johnny specifically, but to everyone watching. I've made over 180 films in my career. I've played soldiers, cowboys, lawmen, adventurers. I've been shot, stabbed, beaten up by every bad guy Hollywood could imagine. And I always got back up. That's what the audience wanted to see, Duke getting back up. He paused, his hand still on Johnny's shoulder. But here's what I learned, and what Johnny here is brave enough to show you tonight. Getting back up doesn't mean you don't hurt. It doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you hurt, you're scared, and you get back up anyway. The camera zoomed in on his face, capturing every weathered line, every mark of a life fully lived. I'm scared too, but I'm not going to let fear be the last thing I feel. I'm going to keep working, keep living, keep fighting until God decides it's time. And when that day comes, I want to go out like I lived, on my feet, moving forward. Johnny's recovery. Johnny had regained some composure now, though his eyes were still red. Duke, thank you. Thank you for coming here tonight, for being honest, He gestured helplessly, unable to find adequate words. Wayne smiled that legendary smile. Johnny, you've made millions of people laugh for years. You've brought joy into homes across this country. Tonight, you did something even more important. You reminded people that it's okay to care, it's okay to feel, it's okay to show that you love someone while they're still here to hear it. The applause that followed was unlike anything The Tonight Show had ever heard. It went on for minutes. People in the audience were crying. The crew members, visible in the background, were wiping their eyes. Even Ed McMahon, who prided himself on professional detachment, was openly emotional. The final exchange. As the show drew to a close, Johnny and Wayne sat together in a comfortable silence that spoke volumes. They didn't need to fill every second with words. Sometimes, especially at the end, silence says more than speech ever could. Duke, Johnny finally said, is there anything you want people to remember? Anything you want to say? Wayne thought about it, his blue eyes looking somewhere beyond the cameras, beyond the studio. Remember to tell people you love them while they can still hear it. Work hard. Keep your promises. Face your troubles head on. And try to leave things a little better than you found them. He turned back to Johnny. And Johnny, thanks for tonight. This meant a lot to me. It meant a lot to me too, Duke. More than you know. They shook hands one final time, and as Wayne walked off stage, the standing ovation began again. He turned, gave his characteristic wave, and and disappeared into the wings. Johnny sat at his desk, watching him go, making no effort to hide the tears on his face. The aftermath. Johnny Carson didn't do another show that week. He called in, told his producers he needed time, and took several days off, something he almost never did in his entire career. Those who knew him said he was profoundly affected by that interview, that it changed something fundamental in how he approached his work and his life. John Wayne passed away just 2 months later, on June 11th, 1979. He was 72 years old. His death made front-page news around the world. Presidents issued statements. Hollywood came to a standstill. But for millions of Americans, they would always remember him as he appeared that night on The Tonight Show, brave, honest, and unbowed until the very end. The lesson: what made Johnny Carson collapse wasn't weakness. It was love. It was respect. It was the sudden, overwhelming realization that he was watching a piece of American history, a man who had defined courage for generations, facing the ultimate enemy with the same grace he showed in 100 films. The lesson from that night in April 1979 goes beyond entertainment, beyond celebrity, beyond television. It teaches us that showing emotion isn't weakness, it's humanity. That telling someone they matter while they can still hear it isn't sentimental, it's necessary. That facing hard truths with honesty and courage, like both Johnny and Duke did that night, is how we give meaning to our lives. John Wayne said it best himself. Courage is being scared to death but saddling up anyway. That night, both men saddled up. They faced something terrifying, the end of an era, the mortality we all share, the pain of saying goodbye to someone you admire. And they did it with honesty, with grace, and with love. The legacy. That interview has been watched millions of times on YouTube. It's been analyzed by film scholars, referenced in documentaries, and remembered by everyone who saw it. Not because it was slick or polished or perfectly produced, but because it was real. In an age of manufactured emotions and carefully crafted public images, that moment when Johnny Carson collapsed and John Wayne comforted him showed us something we desperately needed to see. That our heroes are human, that showing vulnerability takes courage, and that the most powerful moments in life come when we drop our masks and simply tell the truth. Years later, Johnny Carson rarely spoke about that interview. But once, in a private conversation with a friend, he said, "I've done thousands of shows. But that night with Duke, that's the one that mattered. That's the one I hope people remember." America remembered. And we still do. The timeless truth. The story of Johnny Carson and John Wayne's final interview reminds us that life's most important moments often come when we least expect them. That showing someone you care isn't something to save for later. Later might not come. That courage isn't the absence of fear or pain, but the decision to move forward despite them. Both men are gone now. Johnny passed away in 2005, John Wayne in 1979. But that night in April, they gave us something that transcends time. A reminder that we're all human, we all struggle, and we all need to know that our lives matter to someone. So tell the people you love that you love them. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Show your emotions. Be honest about your struggles. Face hard things with courage. And remember that the greatest legacy we leave isn't our achievements. It's how we made people feel and how bravely we faced our final curtain. That's what Duke would have wanted. That's what Johnny showed us that night. And that's a lesson worth remembering. If this story touched your heart, please hit that subscribe button and share it with someone who needs to hear this message today. Let us know in the comments. Who is someone you need to tell "I love you" while they can still hear it? Your story might inspire someone else to reach out before it's too late. Tomorrow is promised to no one. Tell the people you love that you love them today. John Wayne.